Hello and welcome to Global India Podcast, the Fusion Podcast. And today we have Mae Thomas of Maed, M-A-E-D, Maed in India. She is an amazing lady. She was listed by GQ as 50 most influential young Indians. It is indeed a privilege to have you talk to our listeners today, Mae. And reading your bio, I see a little of myself as I did the same being a radio broadcaster. And I know you're a presenter, a podcaster, a journalist, writer, and a voiceover artist with over a decade of experience in radio industry. You started your career as a news editor and journalist, and I'm going to let you tell us all about it.
So my career actually started when I was a journalist editor for a community radio station in Wales, specifically a place called Newport. It was actually me, an Indian woman, and a Scottish guy called Paul Heaney, and the irony that it was an Indian woman and a Scottish man doing Welsh news. But it was exciting because we were covering a beat that we felt like the BBC itself and some of the local sort of newspapers and publications weren't really covering. And it was fascinating because a lot of our stories even got picked up by slightly more mainstream media as well. But that's pretty much how my career started. I actually studied in Cardiff University as a journalist. I did journalism studies and MA there. And throughout my college years, I was always doing student radio, not only as a journalist, but I used to have my own show, and it was really fun. And I think radio had always been a really important part of my life. You know, I'm a 90s kid. My mom had bought me a radio, and I used to have these cassettes. Basically, I was one of those people that used to record music off the radio. So I have all these like half-eaten, half-recorded songs off the radio. So yeah, my 90s childhood very much had the latest chart-topping hits of the 90s on numerous blank tapes. I also felt like with me, radio became a space where I realized I really loved the medium because it was fascinating. I think I was more fascinated by the audio medium and the sort of mystery and imagination around it. Also, that I think during the Bombay floods, my mom and I got stuck at home. And during that time, the only thing that worked was my mom's battery-powered radio. There was no internet, no electricity, nothing. And just that little radio was working and someone somewhere was broadcasting. And I suddenly realized that if ever the apocalypse was going to hit, that I'd still have a job in radio because we'd still be broadcasting. And it's exciting. So good morning to the end of the world. So that's pretty much how my relationship with radio sort of began, and also how I pursued that as my career.
Well, Mae, congratulations, you're on the GQ list. The world's youngest population is in India, 65% of the country under age of 40. So the youngsters seem to influence the country, shaping the way we live, work and play. And GQ has summed up these overachieving individuals who influence the society, leading to change. So how does it feel to be on the list with the likes of Virat Kohli, Karan Johar, Alia Bhatt, to name a few who are household names?
So with regards to the GQ list, I did not expect that at all. That sort of came out of nowhere. This girl contacted me from GQ, and she actually asked me how old I was. And I told her at the time I was 33. And I was in the 50 most influential young Indians. And the young part basically meant that you had to be under 40. So woohoo for being under 40. But I think that being recognized for the work that you're doing does provide some level of validation. Because I think being an entrepreneur, one of the things that you constantly feel is that you're forging a path for yourself and for your company and for the people who are working with you. And you don't always know whether you're doing the right thing or not. You're kind of like, hey, I really believe that this is what we need to do and this is where we need to be, and you're planning towards a vision that you have. And whether it may be the right thing or the wrong thing, you don't know till it actually happens. Like, you can't predict the future. And to be on this list was, it felt great because I think on some level, it was exciting because I made my mother so proud, but it was also exciting because you felt like, hey, this is actually telling me that, hey, you're doing something right, which always, I guess, feels good to a certain extent when you're always doubting yourself as an entrepreneur.
What advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
So my advice to give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to mine would be really getting into the thick of things. I think whatever ideas that you have and things that you want to do, pursue what you want to do in the career that you want to do it. Like whether it is a degree or education, or just finding a way to work within, say, a radio station or with a podcasting company, or trying to make a podcast of your own. I think now with modern technology, if I've ever wanted to test out the format of something or understand whether, hey, will this idea work or not, I actually just do it. I take my recorder and I record something and I figure out how it'll sound. I will play around with audio editing software and to see that, hey, you know what, let me edit it in this way. So I think it's one thing to just think that you're like, hey, I have all these great ideas in my head, but till you do it, you don't actually understand the extent to which either you'll enjoy it or you'll figure out like what works and what doesn't work. So I do think that getting basic skills, like whether it's to do with audio and audio engineering or journalism or media communications, whatever that may be, I just say get in the thick of it. Just go and start working, get the experience that you require to actually start doing stuff on your own. Because till you do that, nothing's going to be served up to you on a platter.
Can you elaborate and tell us about She Said She's Fine?
Oh, so you want me to tell you a little bit about She Says She's Fine? Basically, She Says She's Fine is a podcast that I'm doing with a gynecologist in Bombay called Dr. Munjal Kapadia. He had actually approached us because he wanted to make a podcast, and I sat and had a couple of conversations with him to understand exactly what he wanted to do. And in one of our conversations, he talked about the fact that he used to do an AMA and ask me anything on Twitter and Instagram. And he would get about 700, 800 questions from not just women in India, but all over the world. And that's that moment when I realized that there's this huge gap in information around women's health that did not exist in the mainstream. And I was like, how are we not making a podcast about this? Which was where I came up with the name She Says She's Fine for the podcast, because it's something that women say all the time, and you really have to read between the lines, because are we really fine? And what I did was that initially he wanted to interview his patients who were open enough about talking about their gynecological conditions, whether it could be endometriosis or that they've just been through IVF and so on and so forth. And so, but I felt like that was too intimidating, and we should be able to interview like more than one woman and that are not just his patients. So initially I created a format where there would be two women in the conversation, and he would be helming the conversation, being the medical professional, busting myths and so on. So we've had some incredible women who've been on the show. We've had comedian Kani Surka, we've had an influencer called Aranya Johar, we've had writers like Meghna Pant, we've had a graphic designer called Priyanka Paul, we've had so it's incredible, and we've had both men and women. We've had dads like Cyrus Brocha talking about what fatherhood means to him. So for me, it's been an amazing journey.
Where do you get your inspirations from?
Honestly, I think it's just the journalistic side of me, which is that I love stories and I love people's stories. So I think a lot of my inspiration just comes from conversations. I think every time I'm talking to someone or I'm trying to figure out something, the more I talk about it, the more conversations I have with people, I feel like that allows me to expand a lot of what I'm doing. I also think, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, is that creativity needs space. And I think, it's those moments in time when your brain is just like spacing out and you're just like thinking about stuff. You're like in an Uber ride going somewhere, in a rickshaw, and you're staring out through the window or whatever, and you're wondering like about things, and then suddenly an idea will pop in your head and you're like, oh my God, I never thought of this. And I do think ideas are things that you find, it's like suddenly something comes to you and you're like, oh my God, I don't think you think up an idea. I don't think it comes out of nowhere. I genuinely think that it's something you will find in something. And so the things that inspires me are genuinely conversations with people, because it gives you different perspectives, and also just, being a space cadet and just like zoning out, going into another world in your mind. And I think that can also bring out a lot of your creativity.
So Mae, what is your favorite fusion music?
So my favorite fusion music could be many things. I think everything seems to be fusion of some sort. The stuff that I listen to now, I don't even think I might listen to it tomorrow, but if you want to hear some of my favorite songs and music, please go to my podcast, Maed, in India. That's Maed. Maybe a fusion artist that I recently had on my show that I absolutely love is Bawari Basanti. She's from Delhi. Incredible artist. You should totally check her out.
I know you have been planning for a retirement fund for your mom. That's so inspirational. I hope all youngsters do that.
So, about the Amma retirement fund, that's only because, like, I'm super close to my mom and she's always been super supportive of me. And I just hope that, like, one day she gets to put her feet up and do a little bit of nothing and travel, because the one thing that my mother loves to do is travel. And I think that travel bug is in me too. So that retirement fund is probably for that.
Thanks, Mae, for being with us today. You're a very enterprising young lady, and now I know why you got this award and other accolades. Wishing you all the very best in 2020. And listeners, please do listen to Maed in India, Maed in India. That is Mae Thomas's podcast. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for letting me be on your show. And I'm really excited to hear when it does come out.
We conclude this episode with a fusion joke and some beautiful fusion music. Here is a joke that fusion scientists hear with monotonous regularity. I know about fusion. It is the energy of the future and always will be. Fusion is the perennial bridesmaid that never quite makes it to becoming the bride. Scientists always seem to be making progress, but a practical fusion reactor always seems to remain about 3 decades away. So, what is it about fusion that makes it so hard to achieve and yet attracts scientists to work on it after 6 decades of trying? The answer is, they are inspired by fusion music and see the vast potential for fusion of any sort.
जो ना मिल सका वो ढूंढो तो मिलेगा चले आइयो दिल जो मिले पर गुल ना खिले फिर चले क्यों जो ना मिल सका वो ढूंढो तो मिलेगा चले आइयो दिल जो मिले पर गुल ना खिले फिर चले क्यों जागते मेरी रातों की दूरी सोती हुई चाहत को तकते हैं चले कहीं चले कहीं चले कहीं चले कहीं बादलों की धुन में हुए हम गुम फिर मिलके अभी नई हर सुबह नए नए कारवां फिर मिलके भी बादलों की धुन में हुए हम गुम फिर मिलके भी नई हर सुबह नए नए कारवां फिर मिल गए भी लेकर नए तराने अब मिलना है टूटे इस दिल को जुड़ना है जो ना मिल सका वो ढूंढो तो मिलेगा चले दिल जो मिले पर गुल ना खिले भी चले क्यों चले कहीं 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 चले कहीं
This is a free podcast. However, if you enjoy the podcast to the point where it puts you in a generous mood, you can unleash your generosity by donating to the Lions Club of Bangalore Whitefield. Please check out their website. Please write checks payable to Whitefield Lions Club Services Trust out of your Indian bank accounts and send them to Global India 7612 Fenwick Cove Lane, Orlando, Florida 32819. For more details, please visit our website www.globalindiapodcast.com. Please email your feedback and ideas for future episodes to globalindiapodcast@gmail.com. We would love to showcase your talents and accomplishments as well. All you have to do is to email us a note along with your biodata and a recording of your music. Alvida, adios, au revoir, and goodbye for now.
Uh-huh.